Hey all, here are OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a closer look at the Soundcore by Anker Sleep A30s. These are wireless buds that are an upgrade to last year's A20s, which I really did like. I took these with me when traveling and wanted to drown out some of the city sounds to get more restful sleep. And this time around, they have active noise cancellation built in, which was missing on the previous generation model. So they're going to be even more effective in masking out noises around you, fan sounds, air conditioning, engine sounds, for example, for more restful sleep. And this category was actually originally pioneered, I believe, by Bose a couple of years back, but they have unfortunately since left this space. And so Soundcore is one of the last remaining brands that are still coming out with incremental upgrades. Before, they were all using passive noise isolation with the tips, but now you have that additional ANC component. Furthermore, the A30s now come with adaptive snore masking, so there is some additional processing happening inside of the battery case. So it's all done on device, and it will detect using the microphones the ambient sound levels, and if it picks up your partner or someone else snoring, it will try to mask that with a deeper intensity to the active noise cancellation, as well as some of the Brainwave audio tracks or soundscapes that can play back to help you fall asleep faster as well. In fact, all of those sounds are now non-looping on this generation model, so it's not just playing back a MP3, which only lasts maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Instead, it's generating the sound second per second, so it should never repeat, potentially making them better for sensitive sleepers. Again, these sleep buds, even though they're designed primarily for getting rest, because they are extremely lightweight and small, you can actually wear them even sleeping on the side of a pillow, and it still doesn't really become too obtrusive, so they really minimize the components in terms of their form factor, but they can still be used for music listening. So if you're trying to just maybe listen to Spotify, streaming music, watching YouTube videos, they can still be used, which is, by the way, a feature missing on the Bose. Those could only be used for sleep. So they have that 2-in-1 functionality, which is kind of carried over from their previous generation A20 that we saw. Last but not least, these ones do also track your sleep data. So there's an accelerometer or motion sensor built into the buds that knows how much you are turning and tossing in bed. Similar to a smartwatch, your stages of sleep, like light versus deep versus REM sleep, and you're able to see those analytics and insights when you sync them over to the companion app later on using Android or iOS. So it's a sleep tracker as well, if you find this to be more comfortable than wearing a larger watch. Furthermore, you can set personalized alarm clocks using their companion app, and of course it will ring on the buds, potentially not waking up or disturbing others around you, whether that's a partner or if you're using them in a dorm as a student. It's only going to wake you with a little bit more privacy. So those are some of the touted functionality here. So it actually comes in 2 colors this time around. We have the mint green colorway, which is a bit more subtle, but there is a slightly more greenish hue to it. Also comes in a more classic white color as well. Now, in terms of the battery life on this generation, it's technically going to last around 9 hours continuously when being worn, and you can pop them back into the case for a top-up, in total lasting 45 hours with the battery case, which I think is still rather competitive for wireless buds. Now, I will say that compared to the previous generation model, the battery life is technically a little bit shorter. You can tell that these lasted 14 hours continuously, up to 80 hours with the case, which is impressive. But that's because the new model, again, has active noise cancellation, as well as the snore masking and the non-looping sounds, which are generated on the device. So it is using up a little bit more processing power, so it's expected that the battery will be a tad shorter. But honestly, this should be sufficient for most cases, because you're getting a night's worth of sleep and then popping them back into the case anyways to store them. Soundcore touts up to 30 decibels of noise cancellation compared to around 15 decibels on previous gen models without ANC. And also they claim that the snore detection part has been trained in terms of the accuracy here to work around 93% for identifying snoring sounds. And last but not least, Soundcore claims the size has been further reduced versus the previous Gen A20, around 7% thinner, 2% shorter, so it should be even more comfortable. And again, that 9 hours of continuous listening is including the active noise cancellation turn on. And that means with the battery case combined, you can actually use these for around 5 days. So if you're going for a short vacation trip or a work trip, you don't have to charge them every single night, which is good. There's still touch controls on the surface. And by the way, the sleep soundscapes are intelligent in the sense that they won't be playing the entire night. If it detects that you've fallen into sleep, they will gradually reduce the volume to not disturb you while continuing to use the active noise cancellation if needed. So it's adaptive. And there are 2 modes, either as normal Bluetooth buds for streaming streaming music from your phone, computer, tablet, or a local mode, again, playing back some of the built-in sounds just by popping them out. You don't have to pair it with an app necessarily. It can store a little bit of data, including some of the sounds inside the built-in memory of the buds themselves, which is actually pretty cool. So it doesn't require pairing if you just want to quickly pop them out and get some more restful sleep. Now inside here, you'll find some instructions on how to pop them in, giving it a slight twist to really lock them into place, preventing them from falling out. And in my usage after a week or so, I'm glad to report that I've had no instances of the buds falling out or even rolling underneath a pillow as I'm tossing and turning, sleeping in bed. So they are pretty secure. And underneath here, you also find just a quick user guide as well as some tips providing a more snug fit. So they give you a wide variety of options and sizes to pick between. The silicone tips here also have a slight mesh here for catching any earwax, making them easier to clean. USB Type-C here for charging, a basic cable is included, as well as some wings for different sizing is also going to be provided here as well. And 2 sets of materials, the regular silicone, which might be a little easier to clean, and also they state for optimal comfort, it's the lightest, versus memory foam, it's going to add to even more enhanced noise blocking passively using the material since it will expand to fill the shape of your canals. So you can pick and choose. The memory foam comply style tips, by the way, were not included in the previous gen model, so this is one other enhancement. Now, as for what hasn't changed in the hardware, these don't come with any hi-fi codecs like aptX lossless or LDAC, which we might see in some of their higher-end dedicated music listening headphones instead. So they're still prioritizing more of the sleep component. The music certainly works nicely. We'll talk about the sound quality later on, but it's not going to be exclusively designed just for hi-fi audio. Also, one thing that hasn't been added to this generation would be support for wireless charging in the battery case. That's something that would have been nice to see, but right now it's not found, even though the material of the case is coated with some soft touch rubber, making it not quite as slippery when you're setting it down. And a closer look at the design of the casing here, we have 3 LEDs that gives you a battery status, Type-C here for charging, and there is a hinge that snaps open in a pretty satisfying way to reveal the buds inside. And they just lock into place magnetically with some additional LED lighting, creating a slightly more fancy appearance as it kind of glows there. You can locate them even in a slightly darker space or environment, as you can tell here, looking actually pretty cool. Now, the dimensions of the case are a touch larger compared to the A20s. Surface area is about the same, but it's slightly deeper in terms of the width. But overall, they're still quite compact, lightweight, and easy to take with you when traveling on the go. It's not going to be that problematic. And also a closer look at the design of the buds here next. And indeed, they're extremely slim and lightweight. Just for reference, here are their Liberty 5 wireless buds, which are designed exclusively for music listening, having a stem type shape similar to the Apple AirPods. And you can see them here side by side. In terms of the width, there's a pretty dramatic difference, which is actually quite impressive from an engineering point of view. They were able to squeeze so many components into such a small package, and it still has, again, active noise cancellation this time around. That being said, because there is that wing, which is made out of silicone covering up the back for extra comfort and snugness, it doesn't really have any space for additional sensors like an ambient light sensor for detecting when they're being worn or not. So if you pop them out, it doesn't seem to automatically pause the music, which is a feature we had on the Liberty 5s and AirPods. Instead, for detecting if you've fallen asleep or not, it's using the motion sensors or accelerometers inside. 2 more recent pairs from them would be their Aero Clips as well as their Aero Fit. Both of these are a bit more geared towards sports and exercise with more of an obvious wing. It's a pretty ridiculous difference here in size, but obviously larger dimensions here mean that you can pack in bigger drivers for added bass and impact since they're designed for getting you energized when you are running, exercising, compared to these for just falling asleep. And also the Aero Clips are more of their fashion-forward pair, but also an open-style pair of buds that kind of resembles earrings when being worn. Still, we can observe a pretty large difference in terms of overall size and dimensions. Last but not least, here are the previous A20s side by side, with just a touch thicker and wider than the A30s. And by the way, the silicone tips, like before, are still using this double layer design to make it a little bit more comfy and more snug when you're popping them in. So yeah, I do really like the design of the A30s, and this, again, very subtle green colorway is a bit more muted compared to their Aero Fits. As you can see, they're side by side, even though these are both labeled as green. Also, compared to their other profile of cases, this one is just a little bit more soft as you're carrying it and gripping it with the soft touch rubber finish here versus a matte plastic, which doesn't have any accents on all of the other pairs. Also, popping up the silicone tip, you can see that the mesh underneath is still crafted out of metal like their other headphones, slightly more premium, easier to clean versus fabric. And it's the same Soundcore app used for all of their headphones. So from here, you simply have to open up the battery case door to quickly pair with the Sleep A30s. You can check out the battery percentage remaining. Soundcore has been quite diligent at providing software updates across their portfolio of products. We've seen it on their Aero Fits as well, where a couple of months later, they gained new features like translation capability, which is pretty good to see. So in this instance, you can see they're gaining a couple more functions in the app, including the ability to turn the sleep detection mode on or off, even more accurate tap detection on the touch sensor of the Surface, although to be fair, in my experience, I found them to be already quite good. And furthermore, they're also coming out with a sleep report functionality in a software update as well that can tell you how long you've been snoring at night. But anyways, in the current app, you're able to change again some of the audio soundscapes, finding some other tracks to play back, including ones here for deep learning, productivity boosting, if you're trying to work, which is pretty interesting, one here for meditation, that all have slightly different frequencies for the sound waves. Additional tabs on the top here include one for snore masking. You can find even more sounds exclusively for drowning out some of those background noises. Wind sounds, water sounds, fire sounds can all be found, and even more general white noise sound effects, which we saw on the A20s, can also be referenced here as well. It's a pretty exhaustive list, to be honest. But the, again, snore masking as well as the Brainwave audio tabs, these two, which are being generated second per second on the device, are the two new tabs we didn't see before. And the frequency of those sound waves are based on certain neuroscience and sleep science research, kind of putting you into your own bubble with some of these restful sounds. You're also able to tap to download some of the soundscapes and push them into the built-in memory. If you're using them in the detached local mode, you can override the built-in sound. Different profiles can also be set, one for general, maybe bedtime, unwinding, versus one for falling asleep, as well as set up any alarms that will be personalized to ring on just the wireless headphones. Up to 5 different alarms, different days of the week can be set. Although keep in mind they're still using sound on these, but again the volume level is I think quite sufficient, but they don't have any haptic vibrations or kind of motors to buzz. Perhaps another feature that might be interesting to see in a next generation model would be also adding in some of the sunlight simulation features of the lights getting progressively brighter versus dimmer to kind of simulate the sun, acting as another stimulus to wake you up. But overall, it's still working effectively. Further down below here, you can turn active noise cancellation on or off, as well as again go over from the Bluetooth mode to the local playback mode if you want to use them completely offline, as well as for tap controls. This is where you can customize the double tap and triple tap functionality to switch between other profiles, including ANC, volume, skip tracks, so on and so forth. You can also disable the touch controls completely if you don't want to use them and prevent any accidental triggers. Another tab down below here also provides some general trivia about sleep health and sleep science. Some basic articles can be found here. And perhaps more importantly, you can also find the Sleep Report tab. So the top here is going to be a calendar view that you can cycle back and forth between different days of the week and then tap inside to find the sleep data. For example, on this day, I got a 92% sleep score out of 100, which is pretty good, and I slept very well during that day, for a total duration around 8 hours, which is optimal. And you can see then the awake, light versus deep sleep, and also what particular audio track was being played, the number of times I was tossing and turning in bed, the average per hour, all of these metrics calculated into the final sleep score. Some recommendations and insights are also provided here. For example, if my sleep schedule wasn't super regular in terms of time slept, it will also provide an alert as well. Overall, I would say the accuracy of the sleep tracking has been good. Similar really to the A20s, this is not an area that has been changed dramatically, and it is mostly in line with what I saw on a sample smartwatch or fitness band that I tried wearing around the same time. That is, the stages of sleep are tracked in a pretty similar way, again using the accelerometers or motion sensors. And since Soundcore or Anker doesn't really have a smartwatch, at least yet, this is really their only product, I believe, in their catalog that has some more advanced charts and analytics that you can unlock inside of their app. And so considering that, I think they've done a pretty good job in terms of the charts being easy enough to understand. Again, I would say the sleep style buds, in addition to some of the smart rings, including the Aura Ring, Ultra Human Ring, Ringcon, those are probably the two examples of wearables that are a bit more comfortable for sensitive sleepers. in addition to the time that you took to fall asleep is going to be shown here as well. Now, by the way, the sleep tracking component is missing on the Bose sleep buds. They could only mask out sound and didn't have any ability for you to track any of the data. So this is another area of specialty on the Soundcore Sleep Series headphones, which I do really like, making them a little smarter and more versatile. Now here's another data which triggered an alert because I tossed and turned a little higher than the normal range. It was not quite as restful on this day, and 87% instead, slightly less sleep. So you can tell that it will give you some slightly different recommendations based on the data that it's seeing. Pretty helpful to see at a glance. And this dashboard, again, they're continuing to refine, providing even more metrics as well as granularity through subsequent firmware updates. The Soundcore app here also provides you with some more detailed tutorials if you're stuck or not able to understand specific features. You can actually tap on the very top to find the user guide and specific subsections, including tutorial videos on accessing different features. So it actually is pretty comprehensive. Under the gear icon, you can find some more advanced settings. Find the headphones if they've fallen underneath a pillow or bed, for example, by ringing an alarm. And also under the call and prompt tones, there's going to be an audible confirmation sound when you're turning features like ANC on or off. But you can turn the sound effects on and off here as well, including a low battery reminder function can also be accessed. And yes, because they have built-in microphones now for active noise cancellation, you can also use them for making calls. Playing back a recording from the microphone here next. This is the Bluetooth microphone test. What does it sound like? Microphone test 1, 2, 3 on the Sleep A30s. So actually really not bad, considering these are tiny dot-shaped wireless buds. The microphones are going to be naturally further away from your mouth versus a stem-type design. So considering that, words are generally quite audible for some quick calls, as you heard there. Although there are some communication-specific headsets out there with the microphone that you can adjust the position that might have even better built-in mics, but still not bad for just a secondary feature. Now moving into the performance of the audio quality, specifically for sleep, they worked very well. The Brainwave audios actually sounded super calming. I was able to drift off to sleep more quickly, providing a pleasant and comfortable listening experience overall. Now in terms of the comfort, again, the side profile is a little bit more flat this time around versus past generations, making them ever so slightly more comfortable now. And I would say maybe the first day that you're wearing them, if you're not used to wearing maybe earplugs, it does take a little bit of acclimation, but afterwards you quickly get used to it. In fact, I've loved the A30 so much, I've actually been using them pretty often over the past couple of months, at least a couple of days a week, and found them to be secure and comfortable enough even if you are, again, sleeping in slightly different postures. Now, as for the pure audio quality when you're listening to music, this is an aspect which I honestly don't think has changed too much compared to the A20s, but we're still satisfactory. Unless you are an audiophile, then yes, you can get more impressive multi-drivers, bigger drivers and speakers inside of their other headphones. But honestly, the key word here is good enough, because these are now so versatile with ANC built in. This is a pair that I would reach for in my everyday carry when I'm traveling, because they can do everything, including sleep tracking, snore masking, active noise cancellation for blocking out sound, listening to music, all of that in a pretty lightweight and comfortable package. Since when I'm on the go, I just want something lightweight, works well, has a stable connection in terms of consolidating multiple functions inside, which is quite helpful. So yeah, unlike when I'm at home, I'm listening to an album super closely and picking apart the nuances and details of a recording, whereas when I'm traveling, I just want something more casual, and this is already delivering a more than satisfactory experience, despite having slightly smaller drivers or speakers inside. So there we have it. That's been a closer look at the Soundcore Sleep A30s, and these are actually one of my favorite pairs of wireless headphones at the moment. I know it sounds really strange because I've often thought of these sleep buds as more enthusiast or niche category, but again, these are kind of a jack of all trades now because of the added ANC capability, the fact that they can also be used for music listening, as well as all of the sophisticated sleep tracking and also sleep masking, sound masking functions, the fact that you can use them completely detached with the built-in memory of the case, in addition to connected to the phone, as you saw there very quickly in the Bluetooth mode. So I am rather impressed here, and I would say compared to the previous generation, this does feel like a more meaningful upgrade compared to many other releases that we've seen this year in terms of features that it's gained. So if you're in the market for a sleep aid or a just sleep style pair of wireless buds, or if you just want a pair that consolidates even more functionality into a pair that you can just grab and go for different situations, I think this is one that might be worth considering. Again, as long as you keep in mind that pure audio quality isn't really the main focus point, but rather delivering excellent comfort as well as an all-rounded experience. So you can check out more details if you're interested in something like this in the links down below. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the Sleep A30s from Soundcore.